All right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to episode 329 of Hobby Hotline. Got a topic packed episode in store this Saturday morning. And we got myself. I'm John Newman, Sports Card Nation, Orlando, a collector's dream in Florida, and Uncle Rich Klein down in Dallas, Texas. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, guys.
Morning. And
All right,
say
let me
hi to
get.
the chat. Hello,
Yes.
chat.
All right, so let me get kind of. I don't know what happened with our overlays, but it is what it is. So,
It's
uh,
freezing up.
yeah, I guess well, I'm in the freezing area, let's start off, guys. I don't if you're in the hobby, I don't think too many people in the hobby haven't heard about this story breaking, um, and that's the Paul Skenes card being the debut, major league debut patch being found. And let me put it on the screen for those that want to see it. Let me change how we. I don't know. See, when you don't do the show all the time. All right, I'll cover me up here. That'll work out for you guys and for the audience itself. This is out of the Topps Chrome update. It's the Big Daddy card in this set. And I don't know how you guys feel, but I'm glad that 11-year-old kid in Los Angeles found this rather than a big breaker, and that is I take some joy in that. Not that there's anything wrong with a breaker, but it seems like a lot of these big cards are coming out of certain breakers, arsenals. So, 11-year-old kid, I think he's going to be going to college and paid for with because he has decided to sell this card. The young man did not take the Pittsburgh Pirates up on their bounty offer, or Livy Dunn on her offer individually. So this is going to auction. Rich, you pointed out, which I already knew, this card has already been graded by PSA, double 10. So the card itself got a 10 and the auto got a 10. And so here you go. It's so guys, the thoughts on kind of, what I just spilled there with the young man getting it, the no Pirates deal, and this is going to go to an auction for sale. And what might this card get that financially?
Well, it's being auctioned on Fanatics Collectibles. So we are not talking necessarily right now, but Fanatics just posted in that they have quadrupled like the top sales since 2020. A 4x for Fanatics is pretty good with that type of marketing background and being a key card in their March auction. It's going to go for good money. So I have heard where I did read, this is the internet, so I don't know if you can believe everything, that the young man is the son of a breaker, not a big breaker, but a breaker, and the rumor is he held the card for a while, and I don't discuss conspiracy theories, but there's always, this is the hobby. Somebody always has a conspiracy theory nowadays. Having said all that, wonderful for the kid. His college is paid for. The card is graded. Somebody who really wants the card can get the card as long as they have the coin to do it. And that's fine. I mean, it's a 10-10. We're all graybeards. We've all seen this before. He also lives in Pittsburgh. I mean, he does not live in Pittsburgh. Why would
Yeah.
you take the Pirates offer if you live in LA? Now, if it was something like with All Fanatics Connection, we'll give you box seats to whatever your local team is, that'd be a different subject. Because then you could go like, I would honestly say, could I get a suite each night at the Frisco Rough Riders and just get that to my friends and, use that and some other stuff? Hey, Livy, you're in Louisiana. That's not too far. Come on up for a game. Things like that. But
Yeah, I don't think the Pirates are going to be buying this young man LA Dodgers season tickets. I think the
No,
price.
but Fanatics could.
Yeah, yeah, that's true.
And
The
that's my
price.
point. Fanatics could.
And how
And I
long
mean,
before
who wouldn't want
Frost
to see the
needs is
Dodgers?
a
They're buying every
LA
free agent
Dodger
in
at this
sight.
point?
I mean, they just signed
Yeah.
Sasaki. They just signed the Rangers closer Kirby Yates. They
They sign anything that moves. They called me up and I said, listen, you're about 30 years past my expiration date when it comes to baseball playing. So, you
John,
know,
they're signing us. They're signing Orlando, you and I, so we can be in a senior gray period.
Yeah,
Okay?
right.
I'm signed up for that.
Oh boy.
That's for sure. I can still
Well,
play with my age bracket. I just can't play with 20 and 30-year-olds.
yeah, that's for
And
sure.
even, but yeah, this is you know,
Well, well,
I've heard people say this is a setup, but go ahead, Orlando.
yeah.
Let's get
Let
your
me. I
thoughts
guess
here.
let me share
Yeah,
my thoughts because I was in marketing for many years, and I'm not a conspiracy, but I think it's one of the best marketing things that Tops has done. And let me go back to what Rich said. Rich, you said that Fanatics had quadrupled. That's only Tops that quadrupled. Those are just the top sales that went to 1 point, what is it, $7 billion.
Yeah, 1.6, 1.7 billion.
Exactly. So the thing is this: they put in a redemption, and supposedly the kid got it for Christmas, opened it on Christmas Day, found the redemption, and then now it was 3 weeks, almost 4 weeks after that, that we know now that Tops announced or Fanatics announced that an 11-year-old kid or had found the card. So my opinion is because remember that at the beginning when they first announced this Topps debut patch, they said they would do a white glove uh, where that if you got one of those, they would literally take care of you. They'd get the card, they'd get it graded or whatever, and all that stuff. So I think that's what they did in this case. But I think when Topps found out that it was a kid that pulled it, and whether it was the breaker son, whatever, let's put that off to the side for now. I think Topps called the family and told them because the kid wrote like a 4 or 5 page diary of what happened. And if you read through that, it kind of talks about, well, I was in school and my mom bought it when I was in school. They bought the box and I opened it Christmas Day. And it goes on to kind of tell the whole story about it. But I think that was done after the fact. I don't think that initially was done. The kid didn't want exposure. The family didn't want the exposure. And I don't blame them because 11-year-old kid, you don't want him plastered all over the internet. I wouldn't if it was my son. So I think what happened there is Topps found out, oh, this guy's got the redemption. They contacted the family and, they told the kid, hey, write us a little history of how you found it or what happened, just kind of to promote it a little bit more. And they got the card, Topps Fanatics got the card and went directly to PSA because they had it. It was a redemption. And imagine they did the super express type 1 day delivery, hour delivery thing, must have cost them a fortune. Got it graded a 10/10, where I don't know if the kid would have turned it in if it would have been a 10/10, but anyway, that's another conspiracy. But the bottom line is that Fanatics has now kind of cornered the market on these debut patches, where if it's a redemption, as soon as the redemption comes in, they know who's got it. They're the first ones able to contact that person and say, hey, gotcha. We'll put it through Fanatics Collect. We'll do it there. We'll sell it there. We'll grade it. We'll do the whole thing. You'll stay quiet. You won't find out. You'll just get your money and go from there. And I think that, now they're getting into the point where they're controlling not just what the products are selling. They're making money on the product. And once it's hit, they're making money on the rest of the stuff. Now, the good thing is that I heard that they were going to the profits that Fanatics made from the sale of that card to the LA Fires. That's what I heard that they were doing. So that's a good thing on that. But Fanatics is going to get all these debut patch cards for anybody else as long as it's a redemption, and they're going to control that end of the market, the selling, the grading, and all that stuff. If the that pulled it wants to sell it.
Well, the person pulling it though, Orlando. I mean, they're not obligated to sell it on Fanatics. They can put it on Heritage or Leland or wherever they
Right.
REA. They can do that. And go whatever the less commission is going to be, where there's less fingers in their till, if you will.
Well, they don't
Uh,
pay any commission as the seller. You don't really pay any commission, and
now,
sometimes the auction company, because I had a big card I wanted to auction, and the auction company said they would pay me 105% of the auction. So not just the auction
just
bid,
because they
but
want the
even
item. Yeah, that makes it.
right.
I guess it depends on the item too. I mean,
John,
obviously,
a lot of auction houses, as Orlando says, will never charge a seller's premium, especially if a card is already graded. So there's less
yeah.
recourse for a
Okay.
buyer to complain about it. And remember, this is being done through Fanatics Collectibles auction. And remember, one of the mantras Fanatics has said since they took the licenses and then acquired Tops is we want to control every part of the process. Well, this is certainly a perfect situation of how they are able to control every part of the process.
Yeah.
They
Here's a
issued the
point
card,
by
they got the redemption, they graded the card, or they graded the card, or the card got the PSA as graded, and then they're selling it on their platform. That is their mantra for selling the card. But I also want to point out one slightly different twist. There is somebody who keeps track of debut patches pulled. There's still, I mean, a couple of the big ones have been pulled, obviously the biggest one now, but still it's only about 35% of all the debut patches have been officially pulled. That's
yeah.
2/3 of them have not been officially pulled. And I don't think anybody else is going to be holding. If you have a more minor player, I don't think you're going to be holding that. So I think that number actually is pretty accurate.
Here's an interesting point. What do you guys think about this from Foul Ball? He says Fanatics probably had it graded before the redemption was pulled. Obviously, he makes
No,
a point here. They had the card in their possession, waiting for the redemption card to see the light of day. Could have they graded the card before the
no.
redemption card was pulled?
The Ryan Hogue, the president of PSA, posted a picture of the card directly from Tops. It was in the little box with the little Tops, holder, and
Yeah.
he showed a picture of
Our
it
friend,
ungraded.
our fellow panelist, Chris Carlin, posted how the card actually arrived at PSA. So that's very much a no.
Okay. It makes you think, though. It's an interesting point by Foul Ball. I definitely wanted to throw that out there and spitball a little bit
I think the interesting
about it.
point is if we would have turned it in, would it have been a 10-10 versus Fanatics going directly and handing it to PSA owner Ryan
I
Hogue
like that.
and saying, "Here,
And,
Ryan, look what we got."
well, that's the thing. What do you do if that card grades a 7? I'm talking about the card, not the
It's
auto.
still a 101. It
I
doesn't matter
know.
what it doesn't matter what it grades at. That card could be a 1, and guess what? It's still the rookie debut patch and signed. So that cards like that, you're really putting the card in a holder to protect it, because there is, it's a 101. Unless they have a backup in case something goes screwy, and you say, "Hey, do you have a better condition card?" But there can only be one debut patch. They take off the uniform. So
Well, let's say the card's damaged. They could take the patch back out, make a new card, inspect the card before putting the patch back in it, and then get Paul Skenes, fly someone out to where he is and say, "Sorry about this, but can you re-sign this card? We had to redo it." I mean, it's a lot of legwork and
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
I'll tell you, out of all of the debut patches that have been graded so far, this is only the third one that's a 10-10. There's been like 9 10s or others, but I read that this is only
from the Skenes. It's a nice looking card, and as I said, whether it was a 7 or a 10,
it doesn't.
If
really
I
matter.
pulled that card, I wouldn't care what it graded at. It's a 101. I mean, there are certain things that don't matter. Yeah. There really isn't.
Yeah, imagine it came out, you got it in bad shape. You call up top.
I'd still be happy if it was a 4.
Yeah,
it's a 101. It's going to be worth the same amount of money, folks.
It's still going to be worth. I mean, I think it's going to go for over $1 million. I don't know what you think, Rich.
In 1991, I got interviewed by New York Magazine at the time, and they asked me for my prediction on the PSA 8 Wagner card. And at the time, so I said, well, based on prior history, the card should go between maybe 150 and 200,000, and it's on paper. And that card went for $451,000 or $500,000 after the juice. From that point on, I no longer make predictions that can ever come back to me about how much a card.
Yeah, but you don't get in trouble if you're wrong. That's you don't get lose your job if you're wrong.
I've learned a lesson, John. 30 years later, 35 years later, I stay with the lesson I learned. Don't make
the weatherman's wrong half the time, and he or she still keeps their job.
There is one prediction I will make: if that young man wants to go to college, his college education is paid for.
Well, depending on what this card goes for, guys, he might not even need to go to college. He might just start investing, and his money will make money, and he'd be like, what am I going to college for? I can just buy a business and be an owner and I'm 18 or what. There's a lot of ways there could go. Well, I'm going to make a prediction because even if I'm wrong, my wife won't divorce me and my job won't fire me. Well, I don't know about my wife, but I won't lose my job. I'll say that much. But I think, and I'm going to give kind of a range here, I think it goes between $750K and $1.2 million. I know that's a little bit, a little bit of play there, but that's what I'm going to predict. $750,000 to 1.2. I can't, me personally, I heard somebody say even higher than that. I don't see that, especially being a pitcher, even though a very good one. There's just a lot of risk there with injuries and whatnot. Maybe that's what keeps. Maybe I'm overshooting here for that reason. But Rich doesn't want to put a risk going out there. What say you, Orlando?
Well, I mean, I'm predicting about $1 million, and I just feel that you're going to have either Paul Skenes or Livy Dunn after that card, and to them that's chump change.
Well, what about this? What Pirates don't sign actual major league players? That's why they're not a great team. So they're saving all this money on payroll. Maybe so the young man didn't take their original bounty offer. Maybe the Pirates just use the money they don't spend in the organization. Just like you said with Skenes and Livy Dunn. Maybe it's a 3-person bidding war and they're bidding against themselves. Skenes, Livy Dunn, and the Pirates themselves. Bob Nutting, who is the owner of the Pirates.
Livy did make an appearance at Fanatics Fest last summer. She does have some relationship with the hobby. And so and I do not know if Mr. Skenes is a collector, but if either of them are involved in the collecting world, they may actually just want the card for themselves too. Yeah. And, and if you're, with the money Mr. Skenes and Miss Dunn have, they probably can afford to buy the card if they so desire. And so, the idea of a bidding war, you could very well be bidding against the person who's actually on the card. And, we've had at least one case already where I think the mother or the grandmother of the player pictured, and it was not a star player, bought the debut patch card.
Mike Penny wants to talk about Wemby for the next 40 minutes. So we're going to skip the actual topics we had. No, we're not. We're not.
Well, maybe Mike Penny will make an offer.
Wemby, the San Antonio Spurs just played in Paris. And we can't even imagine the impact he has in France. He is, I'm not going to say he's going to be the next great player, but he is well on his way to being the next dominant force in the NBA. He has done stats through the first 100 games that almost nobody else has. I think the only player with the same stats through the first 100 games, when you count points, rebounds, assists, and blocks, was Tim Duncan. Tim Duncan turned out to be a pretty good player too. So San Antonio, once again, gets a dominant center for how long? So Mike, Wemby is actually quite a card force. And, I just hope for everybody's sake in the hobby, especially those who have invested in him, that he continues on the playing path he's already on.
All right, guys, we're gonna go. Unfortunately for Mikey, we're not gonna. There's your Wemby 5 minutes with Rich rather than 40 minutes with all of us. We're gonna big games.
This is for Petty
tomorrow. There you go, Mickey Mantle. Hey, tomorrow there's a couple big NFL games. I'm gonna cover us all up here just for a minute or less. Who's gonna go to the Super Bowl? You got the opening game, which is Philadelphia hosting the Washington Commanders. Got to always make sure I say that new name right. And in the nightcap, or what someone would call prime time, the Buffalo Bills, led by Josh Allen, trying to knock off, seems like perennial Super Bowl participant, the Kansas City Chiefs, in the nightcap. A lot of hobby impact here, guys. Obviously, in a quarterback-driven league, you got some quarterback stories here, right? Josh Allen, an MVP candidate. I don't think he wins it. He's right there. I think Lamar winds up maybe getting it. And the voting's before the playoffs, I believe. And then you've got Patrick Mahomes, who's arguably becoming the next best quarterback since Brady. And if they keep winning Super Bowls, he's going to be in that discussion. On the other side, in the NFC, you got a rookie making an NFC Conference Championship debut in Jaden Daniels, and Jalen Hurts, who's been there. Jalen Hurts is no Mahomes. He's no stranger to the Super Bowl or conference championship. So, the chalk would lead you to believe Philadelphia, Kansas City, based on experience and been there, done that. I guess I'll ask a two-pronged question. Like predictions, and what other players might, because of these games and then the Super Bowl that follows, might have a bigger hobby impact because of their performances. Whoever wants to go first.
Orlando?
I mean, I'll go first. With Mahomes, I got to go with Kansas City. I just think that Mahomes just steps it up, when you get to those games. And I think it's going to be a good game. That's probably going to be a real tough game, but I think Mahomes is really going to pull it out. And I think for the other one, I'm going to root for Washington. I'd like to see the rookie quarterback come and make a big game and face Mahomes, and be kind of, the veteran with the rookie. I'd love to see something like that. And I think that'd be good for the hobby too, just to see a new face, a new quarterback face coming in there. So I'm going to go for, Washington and Kansas City. That's what I'm going to root for.
I'm always just hoping for a good game. And Orlando's right. I mean, we've got Mr. Daniels in Washington trying to become the first rookie quarterback to get his team to a Super Bowl. I don't think anything that would happen to him, unless he got severely injured, would affect his card values at all at this point. He is obviously the number one quarterback from this rookie crop as of right now. We're still waiting for Caleb Williams, who is 1A. Saquon Barkley of the Eagles has been amazing this year. He's in the MVP discussion, and rightly so. And seeing a national audience, if he has a great game after the game he had last week in the snow, he ran for 2 long touchdowns. Give him another game like that, he could be the first running back in many years to really break through into the collecting hobby. And I mean, he's been around for a while, but this, he has the career stats, and now he'll have the big game exposure. So that's somebody who can come out of nowhere. And I don't want to say nowhere. We know about him if you follow sports, but the hobby has always put him a little less. And in the other, do you realize this is the 7th straight year the Chiefs have been in the AFC Championship game?
Wow.
Yeah, Rich, as a Steeler fan, I do, and it hurts.
Okay, well, I'm sorry, John. And I mean, the Steelers are a class organization.
Yeah.
Yeah, but that doesn't just make you get into the Super
They
Bowl.
haven't had a losing season in like.
I'd rather they have a little less class and a few more Super Bowl appearances in
Well,
recent.
look,
in
I'll
recent
trade
time.
you. I'd rather have the class and the winning record of the Steelers. I live here in Dallas. We haven't seen a conference championship game since 1996. So I'll take the Steelers over the Cowboys for that one. Look, there's really going to be, unless somebody has a really breakout game, nobody really new is going to come out of the Chiefs Bills game, for the hobby. I mean, Travis Kelce had a great game last week. Travis Kelce's already he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. He's got kind of sort of a famous young lady girlfriend, probably more famous than me.
Never heard of her. I know Livy Dunn. I don't know this Taylor Swift.
Yeah, who is it? Taylor Swift. Yeah. She's just a singer. She doesn't do athletics things on the gymnastics mat. But now, in all seriousness, well, the guy who caught the touchdown pass to win the Super Bowl last year, his cards never really broke out. You have to have just an amazing breakout game to really get to the next level, unless you're a quarterback or unless you're Barkley, who 2,000 yards, those 2 TDs last week. You have things like that. So I don't know if anybody's really going to break out in the second game, but it's, we just want good football games. And it looks like the weather is going to hold up for both games. And then they come down to New Orleans in 2 weeks and 1 day. And John, I'm going to steal your thunder a little. I'm going to say something.
Go ahead.
Some of us in the world might want Buffalo or Washington to make the Super Bowl because it's a new blood. We have some exciting Hobby Hotline news that when we make it official, but we have some new blood coming to Hobby Hotline too. And that's really a fun thing.
Yeah, well, I'll get to that. Thank you I probably would have forgot because I'm losing my mind at a quicker rate than you are, Rich. So thank you.
I'm older than dirt. I'm probably even older than Orlando.
Listen, I'm catching up. You might be older than me, but I'm catching up.
You're doing a great job on that. So we'll see what happens. I just want to see good games. I want the excitement of good games. I want to see good, close games. I want to see everybody do well. 36-33, the Eagles and the Commanders with Daniels with that last second touchdown pass earlier this year. That would be a game that would go down in history. And all the Bills, Chiefs conference championships and playoffs games so far have been wonderful. So let's just hope for good games, nobody getting injured, and maybe somebody new breaking out.
Yeah, I echo that. But as a little bit of a gambler, I'll weigh in here. I'm going to give sort of 2 answers: my heart answer and my mind, my head answer. My heart would love to see the Bills and the Redskins, 2 teams that haven't been there in a bit, and definitely guarantee a new winner that's not the Chiefs. I don't know. Jaden Daniels has had an incredible rookie year. Barkley, like you said, Rich, is someone that sets up at shows. He's always been a pretty decent seller, but now even more so with the season he had and the closest he's been to the Super Bowl as a professional. I'm going to pick the Eagles. While I want the Redskins. While I want the Commanders, I'm going to pick the Eagles just because of the experience. And I think that there's going to be a late mistake that may cause. I hope I'm wrong. Here. And, man, it's hard to pick against the Kansas City Chiefs. They always seem to find a way. I know I saw some of the refs' comments. I'd like to argue that, but I've seen some stuff that makes me scratch my head there as well sometimes. But I'm going with the Bills. I mean, therefore, if Josh Allen, same thing. If Josh Allen can play a clean game, doesn't play here, when the Bills lose, it's usually Josh Allen making a couple mistakes. So if he can avoid that type of game, Kansas City is not a high-powered offense this year, guys, and Buffalo is. And if this gets to be a shootout, Buffalo's going to win this game. I don't see Kansas City matching the firepower. So if Allen can stay, fairly turnover-free, when he runs, get out of bounds or slide. Don't try to get an extra 2 yards, cough up the ball, and change the momentum of the game, which could happen. He's been known to do that. If he avoids that kind of Josh Allen game, which he has this year for the most part in comparison to past years, I'm going to say it's Bills, Eagles. And again, I'm in Bills country. I sell a lot of Josh Allen cards. I can't keep them. It has nothing to do with my prediction. But I think this is the year, and maybe I just jinxed them. Sorry, Bills fans. I think this is the year the Bills make people forget about the 4 straight Super Bowl L's, and they get it done and win their first Super Bowl over the Eagles. So I'm going to go Bills, Eagles, and then going ahead, assuming that would be the matchup, I think the Bills are going to outscore the Eagles. You know, again, if Allen plays clean, doesn't make mistakes, they're going to be hard to outscore. I'm going Bills, Eagles, with the Bills winning their Super Bowl and make the sting of those 4 Super Bowl losses in a row less hurtful. And so I probably just jinxed all the teams I mentioned involved. You're welcome. But my Steelers aren't in it, so I'm not going to cry too much for you, Argentina there.
John, as a Giants fan, I have 2 words for you. Wide right.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a Giants fan. I'm a Giants fan.
Yeah. Wide right are 2 of the greatest words ever in the English language.
Yeah. Well, Scott Norwood was like that. He was vilified. You know, I obviously felt terrible as it was. That was like, you know, it was like the comparison I draw. That was like Bill Buckner, the football equivalent of Bill Buckner there with the wide
Scott
right.
Norwood's credit, it's nothing he did wrong. His leg just was not that strong. This wasn't Buckner not being able to be a good fielder. His leg was not that strong, and I've watched that game enough. The Bills actually killed about 15 seconds that they should have saved, and if they had those extra 15 seconds, they probably could have gone more into Norwood's range. It was just on the cusp of his range, so I do not blame Scott Norwood for that. I actually blame the Bills and their time management in the last 2 minutes for that.
Yeah,
as a Dolphins fan, I cannot root for the Bills. So,
yeah, no, I get that. I get that. Listen, it would be like me rooting for the Ravens. I just can't. Sorry, Danny Black. I just can't do it.
Look, my wife's niece and her husband are big Kansas City Chiefs fans, and you know what? Let them have another Super Bowl at this point. It's. You know, the refs have already called 2 roughing the passer penalties on the next 2 opponents. All right, John, you get the next topic up. Let's go.
All right, Dan. This one's a huge one, right? I think if you're a baseball fan, if you're a hobbyist, you look forward to this day every year. Who's getting in? And let me put up the graphic. I'm going to cover us up again for a moment. So. And we'll see how the voting shaked out here. Ichiro, we knew, was a no-brainer. One person did not vote for him somehow, some way. CC Sabathia finished second at 86%. And Billy Wagner gets in as a closer, 82.5 on his last chance on the ballot before having to rely on the Veterans Committee. Let's talk about, before I take the graphic off, guys, let's talk about some of the guys who did not make it and what their percentage was. You got Carlos Beltran, no-go at 70.3. Andrew Jones, who is a favorite of many to people who think he should be in, 66.2. Chase Utley, 39.8. Alex Rodriguez, we know why that number is so low, 37.1. Manny Ramirez, 34.3 for the same reason as A-Rod. And Andy Pettit, 27.9. Again, admitted user of performance enhancing. I'm not a CC Sabathia guy, but I looked at the numbers, 261 wins, and he doesn't knock my socks off. I'm not saying he shouldn't be in. He doesn't scream right off the page to me. Ichiro, there's not much to be said there. And he started his major league career at age 29 and put up some serious numbers
27
in the time. What, 27? When he started? I thought it was 29. I read the graph.
Unless he was using a baseball age.
Yeah, maybe, So even at that, that's a late age to get your first start in the big leagues and then put up those kind of numbers. He was a no brainer. You could take that one to the bank. It was just who else was going to make it. I thought CC had a shot. He gets in. I thought Billy Wagner should got in last year. He's another guy. I know the name is not sexy, but when you look at the numbers, he was a dominant closer. It's tough when you play, during the same time as Mariano or after. That's kind of who you're held up to, and you're not really going to hold a candle to him. And sometimes you pay the price of that. So I'm glad for Billy that he got in. Again, I know it's not a huge name, not a sexy. I mean, closers in general after Mariano aren't really that sexy of a name. But thoughts on maybe what your thoughts, guys, and then even on the guys who didn't get in.
I honestly thought CC would get in. I had absolutely no issue with CC Sabathia. He was a dominant pitcher. Remember, he was a pitcher during what we're going to call the changing of baseball, where pitchers were sometimes expected to go 6, 7, 8 innings. Now they're expected to go maybe 5 or 6 at the most. A guy pitching 200 innings nowadays is an anomaly. And he's one of the last, along with Verlander and Scherzer, of people who you could count to go 6, 7, 8 innings almost every game. There was one year where Sabathia gets traded, I believe, from the Indians, now the Guardians, to the Brewers, at the time still in the National League. So try to keep up with this. There'll be a pop quiz later. And he led the league in either shutouts or complete games in both leagues. Which shows you how few complete games there are, how few shutouts there are. And that's just quite a stat. Having said that, I never had and he has a World Series. He was a dominant force in baseball. Everything about him says Hall of Famer, just like it will for Verlander and Scherzer. So I don't have, to me, that was a nice, easy number 2 vote. Billy Wagner was a dominant closer, very high strikeout percentage, and he'd been part of the baseball conversation, and he could have pitched another year or two and even added to his stats, but he was just ready to retire at the age of 39. And I remember he broke into the nation's consciousness, or the baseball consciousness, when closing out a game, he fanned Matt Williams and Barry Bonds to end the game. And they were just looking like statues with his fastball. And he kept that up for another 15 years. And by the way, his 94 rookie cards are really inexpensive. They've probably goosed up a little. They're at the end of the overproduced era, but they're not super expensive. Ichiro has some accessible rookie cards too, and he's got some cards that are going to be expensive from his rookie year. And CC Sabathia is a 99 tops traded. There's enough of them out there. It will goose up. But again, it's not outrageously priced. I believe, I'm not positive off the top of my head, he has a signature in that set. If he does, that's the rookie year card to get of CC Sabathia. So we've got those situations. And looking at the future guys, next year's I don't want to say terrible, because a lot of these guys were good players. But in reality, the best player on the Hall of Fame ballot next year making his debut is Ryan Braun. Ryan Braun also has a steroid thing in his background. So Beltran and Andrew Jones will move up the percent ladders. They're probably the 2 best players on the ballot. And so I would say you've got at least one, if not both of them, going in next year. So
I think next year, Rich, is a great point by you. I think next year's their shot. I think if next year somehow doesn't happen for those 2 guys you just mentioned, they're going to be on the outside looking in. It's like their window of opportunity. So I didn't mean to interrupt you, but it's a great point by you based on a down year of new candidates. But go ahead.
Orlando?
Well, I mean, I'm a small hall guy. So for me, personally, I don't feel Billy Wagner should have been in the hall. I think before that, he had maybe 10%, 15% of the vote. And because it was his last year, I think he got a boost there. But yeah, he was great and everything and all that. But I just don't think that, to me, he's a borderline guy. And I wouldn't put him in there, especially the amount of innings he pitched in total. And it just, I'm hesitant on putting pitchers in the hall unless, for CC, for example, over 250 wins. Yes, I think now the new standard for the Hall of Fame for starting pitchers is going to be 250. You know, it used to be 300 was a lock. I think 250 is a lock now. Very few are going to even win 200 games from now on. And I think, 250. I think CC deserves it. He was dominant, got a lot of wins. He pitched with a lot of teams, and he was really one of the best pitchers out there during his era. And of course, Ichiro, whoever did not vote for Ichiro, that person should be kicked out of the committee. That person should not vote anymore, in my opinion. He knows nothing. I mean, come on. If you look at the list that you had to vote for, you won't even vote for Ichiro? I think for
I
next
think
year,
when some,
one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was some, and I'm going to use the word some idiot on Facebook, and I forgot the person, but he was complaining about Ichiro being in the Hall of Fame, and he picked somebody who has no business being in the Hall of Fame to compare him to. And every once in a while, you get these guys in baseball who use numbers incorrectly. Ichiro was truly a five-tool player. He could hit with power when he wanted to. I mean, he would hit 450-foot homers in batting practice just to say, "Yeah, I can do this." Just like Ty Cobb. We always talk about Ty Cobb as a hitter, and one day people near the end of Ty Cobb's career got upset at him for never hitting, and he says, "Let me show you." And he hit like 4 homers in a doubleheader just to show he could hit for power, and then he went back to his singles thing. So Ichiro certainly was a great fielder. He had a good arm.
I agree with you. Ichiro could do it all.
He stole a lot of bases. The old thing about hit, run, hit with power, field, and throw. I mean, he was a five-tool player.
I would say he was more. I don't think his arm was as strong as it should be.
Oh no! Watch some of his throws from his rookie year. His arm. Okay. He threw out people from right field like it was nothing at third base. I mean, it may have been a level below Clemente's and Darryl and Dwight Evans. Nobody else had those arms, but if there are 40s on the arms, if there are 80s on, or whatever term they want to use on baseball for the arm, Ichiro's a 78.
Yeah. No, he definitely, I mean, yeah. You can't say, that's why I'm saying he was a no-brainer. I mean, yeah. And for next year, I think, I really only see Beltran, maybe. I don't see anybody else going in. It's such a, I don't think Jones is going to go in. He was terrible at the end of his career. I think if he would have retired a couple of years earlier, I think he was a shoo-in. But then when he went to play for the Dodgers, he just was a bomb.
Well, so Jones was only like 30 when he went to the Dodgers, but that was the case where he left the place he should have been. He never was the same after he left Atlanta. And his counting numbers became good because he actually had some hitting resurgence later in his career. But he's one of these guys that should have taken a home team discount or something and stayed where he was. And sometimes in life, you have players that should take a discount and stay where they are, where it works for them. I mean, now, I'm going to be very curious to see, and on a hobby basis, I'm going to be fascinated to see where the polar bear, Pete Alonso, ends up. Because I suspect he's asking for more than the Mets want to give him. They did, after all, just spend $50 million a year on Juan Soto.
Rich, let me ask you what you think on, since the class next year is kind of...
It's weak. Well, you can say it is a weak class.
Okay. And you see someone like A-Rod, steroid guy that moved all the way up to almost 50% of the vote. Do you think that possibly A-Rod or one of the steroid guys will go in next year because it's such a weak class?
I think they're too far away on the percent. Okay. You don't make a jump that high in 1 year. But long term, I think all the steroid people will make the Hall of Fame because eventually the numbers are what wins out. Clemens will make it. Bonds will make it. A-Rod will make it. Manny Ramirez at 500 homers, he'll make it. Sosa will make it. Eventually, they will all make it. Rafael Palmeiro, 500 homers, 3,000 hits will make it. But it may be not in their lifetimes. Because Mark McGwire, again, it's the Hall of Fame, not necessarily the Hall of Clean Baseball. And they were the best players of their era, or they knew how to take the pills better or whatever. And they will make it, but it may not be in our lifetimes because eventually the numbers win out.
I just put up Mike Petty's post about
Right.
this is why Beltran didn't get in. It's
Right.
that the Houston Astros cheating scandal. Other than that, I think he gets in, and I'm going to say whether Mike Petty thinks he should or not. I think Rich's point. I think Beltran benefits from that weak class next year, and that's how he. I think Beltran gets in next year. I don't see Andrew Jones, who's to me kind of looked at as a compiler. Beltran had a 5 to 8 year stretch
Mhm.
where he's one of the best players in baseball.
Right.
40-40 type guys, 30-30 easily. One of the top picks in fantasy leagues, cover boy on magazines. I think he gets in. I think he didn't get in this year. I think Billy Wagner got in because of the Astros cheating and buzzing and banging on drum scandal. I think next year, with no real class to go up against, Beltran's going to get in, whether you like it or not. And I think that cheating scandal's looked at. I don't know how you guys feel. I think that's looked at differently than doing performance enhancing drugs because in baseball, right? There's people are steal signs and try to get all sorts of advantages. They used equipment to do it, which is like with that line you shouldn't cross. But like everyone's trying to get an advantage looking at the catcher's fingers when he's giving out the pitch time when you're standing on second base. I did that in Little League in high school. So, so I think that's more forgiven than even performance enhanced. So I think to Rich's point, I think Beltran gets in. I don't think Andrew Jones does. I think A-Rod, to answer your question, Orlando, I think he moves up. I don't think he gets in. I think his personality hurts him. I don't think he's a really well-liked guy. Um, the whole Jeter and him thing kind of soured people on him there, and then obviously, performance enhancers and that. So I think next year is the Beltran year, and put an outside looking in, Andrew Jones. But I think after next year, if that doesn't happen for either of those two guys next year, it's going to be a long wait and maybe never. And A Rod like Bonds. I'm not a huge Barry Bonds fan because of what he did and how he is, but that guy was a Hall of Famer before using.
Right.
And so if any one of the steroid era guys gets in, it's got to be Barry Bonds first. And at that point, now you got to we got to get Shoeless Joe in. We got to get Pete Rose in. I always said I think they're going to wait till Pete dies and then get him in. That will be the punishment. Well, we're at that point now. So when does it will and when does that happen? So, baseball is a game where you try to take advantage of different things. Again, I don't like performance enhancing drugs, but stealing signs, as long as it's organic, I don't have a problem with that. If you start getting into like scoreboard signals and electronic stuff, there's got to be a line you can't cross. And they were penalized for that. Some may not think that was harsh enough, um, but that cost them draft picks and money and other things. I think it cost Beltran being in the Hall of Fame already. And so I think he gets in next year. Could be wrong. It's just a prediction. And based on what Rich said, that class next year is bad. Like if
Yeah.
Beltran don't get in, it's going to be like some writers and like contributors to the game. And listen, we all know I live an hour from Cooperstown. Induction Day is a huge money maker for this town, and they're going to want a player right as much as ever, even if it's one.
By the
Just
way, they're already anticipating huge crowds. I think they said
yeah,
it's the biggest crowd in like 10 years coming. Some of my ComC teammates, because ComC's in the Seattle area. I know a couple of my ComC teammates have already purchased tickets to go to Cooperstown next year. Or later this year. I'm calling it next year, but later this year.
yeah. Steven agrees. He thinks Beltran's a shoe in. Stealing time from second base is part of the game. If you don't like, I did it. Obviously not at the major league level, but I'd have a thing if I was on second and I knew a fastball was coming, might be tapping the top of my helmet. If it was something
Mhm.
off speed, I might just grab my brim or kind of, grab both knees. We had a system at high school to try to warn the batter, give him a heads up of what pitch he might be seeing. So I don't, that's been part of the game since the beginning of time. It's just when you start using buzzers and wearing a wire like you're an
Yeah.
FBI informant, that's the problem. Do it organically, right? So we'll see. And going back to the Ichiro thing, whoever didn't vote, I think when you have a situation like that, everyone says that guy should lose his vote. I like to just see who did that guy vote for. If he didn't give Ichiro a vote, who the heck did he vote for that he deemed more worthy than Ichiro? So, and then we can determine whether he should still retain his voting rights or not. And it's a great point. Baseball Hall of Fame autographs, and you touched on it too, Orlando. I don't know if we're going to see a 300 win pitcher again. I think 250 is the new 300. They say, you know, things like that. I think 250 is the new standard bearer to get in the hall automatically as a pitcher. Now, can you win 230 and have like dominant other stats that get you in? I
Yeah,
think
sure.
that could happen, but I think 250, like, if we look at 500 home runs, I think we'll look at 250 wins, and I think 200, even for a really good pitcher, is not guaranteed. Just the way pitchers are only pitching 5, 6 innings, and then middle relievers are blowing win opportunities, or closers are blowing win opportunities. So I think we've seen our last 300 win pitcher
Yeah.
for who knows how long, if ever. Again, I think 250 is that new number that gets you on the podium doing a speech and holding your plaque, and then between 200 and 249, you're going to have enough other numbers that still get you in as a pitcher. So we'll see.
Okay, let's go on to any other topics we have.
All right, we got one more, and it's a big one because it's a big number. Tops. Let me pull off that. Tops boost Fanatics with 1.6 billion in sales, quadrupling. That's four times for you scoring at home since 2020. So their sales have four times since we'll say 4+ years ago. I'm going to pull this off the screen. We don't need to see it. We can put ourselves back on here. That kind of surprised me, guys. I'll be the first to say, um, that number. I knew they weren't doing bad, but four times I wouldn't have predicted that. Uh, Similar thoughts, or did you kind of that didn't
Well,
shock you?
no, I knew it was going to happen. I mean, with the amount of printing and products that are coming out and all that, and this is only the beginning. Remember, they don't have they're not fully licensed yet, but they will be. I think they're going to get in a couple of years. They'll have everything. But what I think with them is that they struck gold with the Tops Now product, with the Olympic team card that they did, and with the Ichiro 50/50 card. I mean,
You mean
it's
the Otani
literally
50/50?
the Otani, right? The Otani, sorry. It's literally printing money. They were selling these cards at what, $8, $9, $10 each, and they printed what, almost 700,000 of these Otani cards, plus all the other Tops Now that they did. I think they just flat out printing money with that. That was probably their biggest money maker. They didn't make well. This is Tops, because Fanatics didn't do well with some of the events they did, but overall, I think struck gold with Tops, and I think the Tops Now product, the stuff they're doing with the Skenes that we talked about earlier, and all this marketing stuff that they're doing is just boosting them. And of course, the breaking has just gone crazy with the doing it on their site and all that stuff, and it's just I think they 4x'd their profits. I don't know about 4xing the hobby, but I do think that the hobby has at least doubled, in the last couple of years. What do you think, Rich?
Oh, I think you brought up a great point earlier. Debut patches. They will have all the licenses in a year or two for both for baseball, football, and basketball, and you can have debut patches in all three sports. I mean, in football, you'll probably have some. I mean, they may be more common. You might have to limit it to more skill players because otherwise, every offensive lineman in the if you do every offensive lineman and defensive lineman in the world, you might actually get team collectors. These guys may never have another card. You might actually get people, and back in the day, there were a ton of really intense Pittsburgh Steeler collectors. You might get like a Steelers collector or a Cowboys collector to get the more obscure patch cards. So it's actually not thinking about it on the fly, it's not a bad idea to do everybody in football with a debut patch because, and then think about it like, what if you have a debut patch card and the guy takes a year or two to make it as a quarterback or comes out of nowhere? And that happens. Sam Darnold had a great year.
Yeah, I was about to mention Sam Darnold. We've seen this before. Teddy Bridgewater had a rough start that had a stretch where he actually was playing well, and now he's on the he's on a roster but not starting and probably going to retire soon. But we've seen quarterbacks just kind of get a second life, and so that's a great point. And I'm sure that we're going to see those, Rich. If we're thinking about it, in our house, I hope hopefully the smart money. I think it's one of the best ideas Fanatics came up with. I don't. I'll bash them sometimes, but I got to give credit where credit's due. Right? That's the only fair thing to do. It was a brilliant idea on multi levels, from a marketing standpoint and from a collecting standpoint. If you want to own how cool is it to own a card of this? Like imagine if those cards existed when, like, during Jeter's rookie year, and you have a Jeter debut patch card. What's that worth today if that card existed, right? And so some of these guys, I'm not saying they're all gonna, they're not all gonna have a career like Jeter's, but there's gonna be Hall of Famers that are gonna have major league debut patch cards now. In 25 years, and they're Hall of Famers now. That card has, I'm sure, risen in value and will be highly sought after by multiple people, but only one people. One person can own it.
Well,
So
one thing to have remember: the debut patches are like put on a shirt and easily removed. So it's not like you're going
yeah,
to
yeah,
damage the jersey either.
yeah. Great point too. I want to follow. Great point by Orlando. I don't. I agree with Orlando. The hobby is not four times. He mentioned two times. I'll agree. I'll agree with that. Their profits might be four
Right.
times. But the other thing that isn't shown in that graphic, guys, and you know this, and so does the people in the chat room or listening on audio podcast, they spend a lot of money too. It's the old Patrick Ewing line, right? We make a lot of money, but we spend a lot of money. So, they're paying. Remember, they're at the negotiation table with the players now. They're eating at the same table where that wasn't the case before. So they're paying out a lot more money. So yes, they're doing well, but they're paying well
Right.
too. So it goes out and it comes in, and so I'm not crying poverty for Fanatics, but don't misconstrue
Fanatics
that.
is doing
But
just fine, thank you.
Yeah.
yeah, that's what I'm. But they're also like, I think it was a great point too by Orlando. Is I don't think the hobby's four times at this point. I think
Not
it's
yet.
yeah,
Okay, so
maybe
as we're
maybe
approaching the
two.
top of the hour, let John end with some of the exciting new changes on Hobby Hotline.
All
Yeah.
right, so I saw a couple comments tonight, guys. They thought the show was over when we kind of took December off, and no, we just went on a holiday hiatus. We'll call. We unplugged for a month. We're back, and there might be an off week every once in a while where something happens and we don't air, but for the most part, we're going to be scheduled every week, and we've added some new blood to the mix, and I'll put a graphic on the screen. I'm not going to name everyone that isn't new, but I'll name some of the new folks. Let me again take this off. So join in our crew, and you'll start to see some of these folks in February. Samuel Evans, in no particular order. I don't, Samuel Evans, sports card collector on Instagram. John Mangini, who I'm told is the hobby president. I didn't get the vote, so I don't know how that happened. John's a great guy. I'm only kidding. But John Mangini, you'll see him. We can't guarantee anyone's safety there. Alex Tressler, Army ATC 22, will be part of the program. And last but not least, Lauren Rizzo Schaefer from Lauren Goes Here on Instagram. And so I'm not saying that there's a couple blank spots on that graphic, guys. So, we don't rule anything out. But as of today, that's the starting lineup, if you will. So, I like to say every one of these uh, people are great. Otherwise, I don't think they would be here, and happy to add some better looking people than me. That's always that's really the only prerequisite, which actually almost qualifies everybody. So maybe we need more disqualifying agents. But no, all joking aside, some great folks. You're going to see some different voices, right? And I think that's always good. Now we got to get some folks trained to do this hosting thing. You saw what I did today. It's you probably could do better, and then we can definitely mix up the lineup card even more so. So, happy to have them, and welcome to them. And I think they're generally good folks who people like, and care what their opinions are and what they have to say. So look forward. This is the last one in January. But man, January seemed to just fly by. I didn't even think about that. But so you might see them as early as next Saturday. So there you go.
Thanks, John, for running the ship. Anybody have final words?
Well,
Thanks, John.
everyone's
Thanks
saying
for having me.
where's Victor? I got to put the screen up.
There he
Victor's
is.
on here.
He's on lower right corner.
Yeah, lower right corner. Don't scare me like that. They're trying to say Victor wasn't on there. No,
Victor took some time off. He had some thankfully minor personal things to do at his house.
There he is.
Nothing
Yeah.
like anything bad. He just he had to do some home renovations. And
like Paul McCartney said, I'll use it to Victor. Reports of my demise are incorrect.
that was Mark Twain.
Victor. All right. Well, listen, I get
The
Paul
report-
McCartney said Paul when they did the whole Paul is dead, and he's like, no, I'm not. So
Mark Twain was the first one. The reports of my demise are greatly exaggerated.
So there
And now
you
we
go,
all
Victor.
use that line. Samuel
Yes,
L. Clements. I'll just start by saying I went to the Dallas Card Show last week. It was an absolute monster of a show. It's funny. The Rangers tried a fan fest, a small card show, and I'm sure it went well because of the number of people there. But it was kind of silly having a card show the same weekend as the Dallas Card Show, and they didn't do a lot of publicity or prep for the show at the fan fest. The Rangers fan fest started, by the way, when they called it the Winter Carnival. There was actually half of it was a card show at the Arlington Convention Center, and half was the Winter Carnival, with the players signing. So that's kind of a return to the roots. And I'll call my wife back in a couple of minutes. But the Dallas Card Show is our good friend John Keating would say, proves that once again the secondary market remains undefeated.
Yep. Yeah, no doubt. Shows. I mean, even the smaller shows I do here, Rich, and I'll keep this short and sweet. Like I go into them kind of thinking, it is, it's going to be this kind of show, and sometimes it surprises me. So you never know, right? And listen, we just talked about fanatics in the growth. Like the hobby's bigger. We can debate 2 times, 4 times, 8 times. They want it to be 10 times. It's bigger today than it was last week, and it'll probably be bigger next week than it is right now. So, and that's a good thing, right?
Yes.
That indicates strength. I don't care what industry, what business, what hobby. That's a good indicator. So, Reports of the hobby's demise
Are
are
greatly
greatly
exaggerated.
exaggerated as well. I had to end on getting that quote right, Rich. I had to go
Okay,
out.
good job. Orlando, you
Rich,
want to say the final word?
no, just Rich knows because he met Samuel Clemens personally.
I think they were from the same high school graduating class. I'm
No,
not sure.
that's only Tom Lehrer who went to my high school, 94 years old and still a friggin' genius in music.
Wow.
All right, guys. Well,
Thanks, guys.
thanks
Have a great
everybody.
weekend.
Thanks everyone out there. Appreciate bringing the show to you. Appreciate the active chat room. Even if you're not in the chat room and you're just downloading the show afterwards, we appreciate you as well. You're giving of your time.
And we'll see you next week on Bench Clear Media.
There you go. Have a good night or have a good weekend, everyone. Enjoy football, and we'll see you here a week from today.